Well, hi, I'm Lyn McCright with Advancing Nurse Coaching. Teresa and I are the chapter leaders of Austin area chapter of the American Holistic Nurses Association. And our chapter actually started in the year 2010. And we started with the opening meeting being hosted by Dr. Carol Landrick, who then later became the president of AHNA. Teresa?
So I met Lyn in 2011, and I still remember it because I was standing in the middle of Walmart and she calls me and I'm like, okay. So a friend of mine had given me her phone number and said, I need to know her. Well, she didn't give me Lyn's phone number. So it was almost a year later when Lyn called in 2011. It was January actually. And she called me and she's like, well, I just opened the holistic nursing chapter here in the Central Texas area, and I want to know if you want to be a guest speaker. And I was like, I don't know. I don't talk to people like that anymore. You know, we're doing my work, and but something about that conversation was like, oh yeah, that I didn't know there was such a thing as a holistic nurse. I had been doing what I called holistic nursing my whole career. So I was very intrigued. And so when she called me back a couple of days later, she said, what about now? I said, okay, before I could say no. And as they say, the rest is history. We actually met at my hospital and I presented on aromatherapy as my very first presentation to the holistic nurses. And it was a wonderful experience. I felt like I came home to people who understood me, to nurses who wanted to do patient care the way that I did. And we've been working together ever since.
It's been such a joy. And really what is so meaningful to me is the opportunity that we have to bring nurses into holistic nursing and watch them blossom. That's just more fun than anything. And we've seen so many people come in and accept responsibilities on the board or whatever. And we know that working together is what it takes for us to create the future of nursing.
Which is why we wanted to be here today to talk to you all about our vision for what the future of nursing will look like, what your vision for nursing will look like. And most of you know that we are nurse coaches, board certified nurse coaches through Margaret Erickson's organization, American Holistic Nurse Certification Corporation. And that has just been an amazing journey that has brought us together with, I think, nurses who want to take their gifts and talents out into the world to create environments for people, for healing, for health, and to take their career to a next level of what's possible for humans as we come through this pandemic and as we begin to find our footing. I think healthcare is changing drastically, and nurses are on the forefront of bringing our idea of what nursing should be into our communities, into our homes, and more importantly, to help ourselves become as healthy as we can be, to enjoy our life, to find that joy in the work that we do as nurses.
Well, I guess it's time to begin.
Okay, let's start. So we prepared a little presentation for you to talk about what we do as resilience principles and what that means for the leading edge of nursing. This vision of nurses creating the future of healthcare, the future of what health looks like. And we know we can't do this alone. We're a part of a huge system, but nurses have a unique perspective of how to help people through all of the aspects of their life from birth to death.
This picture just takes my breath away. I remember not long ago standing between the edge of the Pacific Ocean with the beautiful trees on one side, the oldest trees in the world, and the ocean in front of me. And the redwoods are just so strong, so supportive. And the ocean is so strong and so supportive. And there I was standing in the middle, right between the Pacific and the redwoods. And the energy of that space is, for me, the strongest energy that I have ever felt, any physical location in this planet. So when we're talking about the leading edge of nursing, we really are talking about an energetic source, something that we all have access to and that always, always, always supports us, feeds us, energizes us, moves us forward at any point in life. As you know, of course, with human development, if we're not moving forward, we're moving backward. And it's a critical moment for us now to realize that creating what's new in nursing is absolutely wide open, and that each of us can bring our own talents, our own skills, our own ideas, our own love of the discipline of nursing to make it more whole, to make it more healthy, to find a well of being within each of us that we can bring then to the profession at large.
So where do we go from here? You know, we keep talking about the change in nursing and the future of nursing, but the real future of nursing is here now. We've come through a pandemic. We're still learning lessons from that, but we have an innate ability to go with the flow, to see the ebbs and flows of life. And I think that's what we've been seeing through this pandemic. We've heard miraculous stories of healing and help, and we've heard other stories where people are suffering so much. But I think really that's just a part of life. And as we talk about nursing as the future of nursing, you know, these principles, we call them mind, consciousness, and thought as a way to describe how human experience is created. And they do create a foundation of health, where we experience all the aspects of being human. And our health and well-being lie within those principles because we are those principles. And through that, when we can see that we're the ones that are creating all of our life experience, all of the ways that we show up, we're planting seeds of health for other people. When we bring our knowledge and talents to every person that we touch, we're planting seeds of health. And I think when we come through something like the pandemic and we start to see how we do touch people and how important that was, and turn it around and begin to see it's time to do it for ourselves. In that way, once we begin to take care of ourselves, we have more energy. That well of being overflows and allows us to go out into our work day or with our families and have this energy and vitality for life that, in my opinion, is what creates a good and wonderful life. So planting seeds for the future is what we're doing now through nurse coaching, through all of us taking our gifts out into the world and seeing it with new eyes.
I love that title. The future of nursing is here now. was actually the title of our conference that we did most recently, which was 2019. This, as you see, is our 9th annual event. Of course, we skipped a couple of years, and I am just so thrilled to be in the company of a living nurse theorist in the person of Helen Erickson. She is one of only a handful of nurse theorists that we consider within the holistic nurses to be holistic. Her nurse theory is holistic. Well, I just am wanting to express such gratitude for the opportunity that we have to know both Margaret Erickson, who is her daughter, and Helen Erickson, the theorist. We were so privileged, and it's the vision of the nurses who came before us that we are building on now. So let's make a really solid, really beautiful, exquisite foundation for what is to come next.
So I'd like to talk now a little bit about resilience principles paradigm. We have a paradigm that we use to experience life with. They are elements. They're the foundation of human experience. And we call them the principle of mind, consciousness, and thought. Those principles are actually neutral. They don't have any meaning on them until we put our personal thought and feeling to it. And that's a funny way to talk about something that's a principle or a foundation. But as a paradigm that doesn't have exceptions, that we can't say it only works this way sometimes, it works this way all the time. They're words that we use as a metaphor about our life experience, but how do they actually help nurses in their daily life? And I have experienced these over and over and over as I have taught, I have learned, I have listened to people talking about these principles and what they do for a person. And what happened to me was sitting in a conference in 2015, listening for the very, very first time about the fact that we have principles that guide mental life, but that go deeper than that, because whatever we're thinking, we feel. And whatever we feel is what we bring out into the world. It's how we view life. It's how we see other people. We only see other people through what we think about them. And I thought, how is that possible? Because it looks like to me that circumstances play a really big role in what's happening to me and what I'm experiencing in life. And at that particular time, I was, going through a few problems with my husband retiring from the military, not sleeping, having nightmares, things like that. A daughter who was going through some alcohol problems, and a daughter going through divorce all at the same time. And I was like, I don't know where to turn first. Plus, I'm working full time. And he started talking about these principles that they only work one way, which means it's your thoughts about everything that creates your life experience. And I sort of thought, okay, well, yeah, I know I think. And then he started talking about separate realities and saying, you have a completely separate reality from everyone else on earth based on your history, the way you have interacted with life, the choices you've made. And then he said something really profound. He said, you can't help anyone else by thinking for them. And I went, oh, was I doing that? And there was a little part of me that knew that that was true. I was the mother and the wife. I obviously felt like I had something to do with what was happening. But I heard on this really deep level, oh, they're experiencing their life through their thoughts and their feelings. and I can't have them. I can't know anything about them except for what I see from my perspective. And it opened up this whole new world of seeing life through this lens of my thoughts and my feelings, creating this experience of my life. And that was all that was ever going on. So I see this as helping nurses when we know that this is how it works, we're going to see life a little bit different. We're going to have new thoughts about the way things are and where our vision of what nursing and healthcare will look like.
I want to say how much I appreciate Teresa in finding this little graphic for us. It's beautiful, but it reminds me that there was a time when human beings thought that things such as earth, fire, air, and water were elements. And now we know that that old thinking is obsolete, and we've let go of it centuries ago. But what is coming on board for us now is the reality of the principles we're speaking of. And the words that we use are the words mind, consciousness, and thought. Well, what is mind really? The source of all things. It goes by many names. The words are not important here. We use these particular words to describe it because we find that most convenient for us. You may have other words. Consciousness is just an incredibly beautiful, huge, and not well understood capacity that we have as humans, but it also extends far beyond our human consciousness to a global consciousness, a universal consciousness. Even the rocks and the trees have consciousness. It's being measured all over the world today, scientifically. It'll be very interesting to discover what they find. But thought is so much more approachable for us. It's something that we use on a daily basis. And in fact, human beings are never without thought. When we're sleeping, we have thoughts too. I'm sure you've heard of nightmares. And one time I had a friend who woke up just in a sweat, thinking that he was about to fall off the edge of a cliff in a nightmare. And he thought, well, here I am, all hot and sweaty. I'll just take myself to Hawaii and lay out in the sun. So that's where he put his thoughts. In a beautiful, relaxed moment, he was already asleep again. And the panic of the earlier thoughts were gone. So as we see this, our old thinking will drop away because it is obsolete. And what we see in the moment is fresh, is new, and that is where our answers come from.
And that's how it helps us. I love this picture because I feel like it's nurses looking out into the world with this huge vision of what they see as what the problems are, what the solutions are, and what the role they want to play in it. And whatever we see, it comes from our thought. It's whatever we think is what we see. Our thoughts, our feelings, our being, this being within us that is emerging and showing people who we really are. It creates our life experience, a full-bodied experience. We're not separate from our body. We're not separate from the world, but it is through our personal thought that we get to experience it. And I think that's the beauty of these principles, mind, consciousness, and thought, the fact that they're neutral. They don't care what we think. It doesn't matter how we feel. We just get to do it. It's a part of us, and it gives us that to know where we are in the universe, to know where we want to go, the life we want to have. And I just can't think of a better place to be right here, right now.
Understanding ourselves. Well, so when we know where our experience is coming from, then we know how we work. And again, I love this beautiful illustration that Teresa has found. It really speaks to us nourishing ourselves to be able to go out then and nourish others. We're just beginning, in my estimation, we're just beginning to blossom as a profession in a way that will bring such new growth and new life to people who live together on this beautiful planet of ours.
Yeah, I think when we are able to see ourselves and how we work in this world, we can it fine tunes it for us so we can see others and how they work too, and give us that space to grow and share and develop and see new possibilities and thrive. I think this world of nursing that we live in, that I live in, I see so much potential in all of us working together, because we all have different interests. We all have different ways of showing up and bringing ideas into reality through whatever way we're doing it. Many of you have nurse coaching businesses where you help individuals or groups. Through this new lens, you can see new possibilities of how wide-reaching this nursing can be. When we're not bogged down by self-criticism or insecurity or repetitive thinking, and we realize that that's just a thought, it's much easier to move past that and letting that go, or just dropping that thought or releasing that thought, allows new ones to come with ease. We actually get to choose which thoughts we pay attention to. I've always been surprised at how many people think they need to pay attention to all the thoughts and make sure to do all the things. Nothing really happens if we don't pay attention to a thought. And in that way, it just goes on by. And what is really truly important to us will be what we focus on every moment. If
Wow.
we can allow ourselves to notice.
I'm remembering now about a friend who was driving, and she felt a huge, overwhelming anxiety. And the thing about her anxiety was she was all by herself in the car. She was on the interstate, moving forward rapidly. There was nothing in front of her that was a problem. She looked in the rearview mirror, nothing back there. Checked all the dials on the dash, not a problem. Did the whole thing over again, checking. And then she realized that we sometimes are fooled by our own thoughts. And all we need to do is catch ourselves in that moment. And when she realized that it had to have been a thought, because there was nothing else happening, she was just driving on a beautiful day, she laughed, relaxed, had a wonderful trip, enjoyed the rest of the day, never knew where that interfering thought came from, what it was, no connection to the beautiful day that she was experiencing. And yet in that moment, there was an issue that apparently needed to be resolved because it emerged and she felt it, but then she let it go. She was not fooled by her own thought. And I just am going to take that a step further to say that the National Institutes of Health did a study with certified nurse coaches. And one of the things that they found was that there were three major areas that nurse coaches work in. The first area is stress and anxiety. That's so representative of the issues that people bring to our profession. The second most common area is actually chronic illness. The third area is pain. So in all of those areas, nurse coaches can help people see that their old thinking may not be serving them in this moment. And for them as human beings to be able to take the next step toward their health, we're walking beside them as nurse coaches. The client is a little bit ahead because it's their goals that they're working on, but we're there as a sounding board. We're able to help them see what they say in the moment. And we have a key that we can use, which is our own insight, our own informed knowing. I love that word, informed knowing. It came from Dr. Barbara Dossey's handbook of holistic nursing, a handbook for practice. And that informed knowing is truly beyond us, but it's what we use every day and is in fact our most important tool.
I love that. So we feel our thoughts. We feel them in our body. We feel them coming through us and around us. Thoughts and feelings are always together. But sometimes when we're experiencing this stress and anxiety, and it's felt through our entire body, we feel like there's something to do, somewhere to go, something else that we need to do to relieve this stress and anxiety. But really, if you can pause just for a second and take a notice, these symptoms can be little love letters to us and let us know what we've been doing with our thinking in the moment, even maybe a couple of hours before that. And I've actually done this. I used to have a problem with my stomach a few years ago, and I didn't connect it to stress. I didn't connect it to my anxiety. I would always get it if I was driving through Dallas or Houston or someplace like that. It would just kind of well up and I would not feel well as I was trying to drive. And what is that? And I realized where my thinking had been just prior to the symptom appearing. And I also noticed that when I took my thoughts off the driving or the fear or what was happening with the traffic and let it just kind of slide by, the feeling in my stomach would go away. And I thought, oh, that's the mind-body connection. That's the way we get little love letters to us that says, listen, take a pause, notice what you're doing and see how that feels in your body. And I started to really, almost as a game, track this feelings that I would have in my body, and pains would appear and disappear. My stomach would act up and it would disappear. And I noticed that my thoughts were usually spinning, or I was having some negative experience through my thinking. I would actually be sitting in my living room or even driving to work, or I could even be sitting in my chair at work waiting for a patient. And if my thoughts took on that negative aspect of thinking, I would be suffering. And as soon as I noticed what was happening and I shifted my perspective to what I was grateful for how excited I was to see my next patient or to help someone in need, or even think about the next vacation I was taking, it would go away. And I thought, that is so weird. I never knew how intricately, I can't think of the word, but intricately connected we are to how we think about life. And knowing that actually helps us to just watch those thoughts go by, just like the weather. We don't have to pay attention to them. They can occur to us and we cannot put our attention there. It's how we move forward in life. It's how we make plans to do vacations or buy tickets or whatever we want to do. And I just wanted to bring that up because sometimes we don't notice that that's what's happening until we're really sick or we really don't feel well and we have to take a break. I feel like that's a part of health that we often miss because there are chemical reactions that happen within us based on our thoughts. If there's something to run from, we get an immediate adrenaline rush. That's how the system works. And when we activate that system a lot, we're going to experience the effects of those chemicals within our bodies, such as high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, anything that affects internally will become part of our experience as we learn how to navigate what health looks like. And to me, health looks like letting a lot of things go that aren't serving me well. I love this photo because it reminds me of all the different ways we show up. If we live in the feeling of our thinking expressed as emotions and attitudes. I thought it was humorous. One day we were talking to Keith and he was talking to someone and he said he didn't think that he was feeling his thinking at all, a client of his. And he said, well, do you have an attitude or, a way of showing up that people say that you're being a certain way? And he goes, well, yeah, of course, everyone has attitudes. And, but he didn't connect that as an emotion, which I had never heard before. We're so synthesized into the mind, consciousness, and thought, this paradigm that creates experience, we don't even notice it because it is us. It comes through us. There's no effort in that. I was once told that I needed to wear sunglasses because I was an open book. Whatever I was thinking was on my face. And I was like, oh, so I practiced trying not to do that. You can't do it. It's just a part of you. And I think that helps us, especially with nurses, between some of the problems in nursing with incivility or burnout or our patients and how they're showing up. They're just feeling their thinking. That's all that's happening. We don't have to have something on that. But what it does for us as our own person is to let us know that, oh, I'm just thinking my feelings. And that's all that's happening. I don't have to do anything about it. But in that brief pause of recognizing that, you can respond instead of react. And it opens up a space that allows us to be better at our job, to be better to ourselves, and to live more easily.
Yeah, it was Dr. Keith Blevins that came to our conference, the Texas Regional Holistic Nursing Conference in 2015. And those words about the paradigm, mind, consciousness, and thought are his words. And he brought them to us at our Holistic Nursing Conference. And we've been using them ever since. It's just been so beautiful to watch the growth of our nurses as individuals and as ourselves collectively within holistic nursing.
So understanding our human misperception, and it's a misperception that we all have, and we go in and out of it all the time. It's that understanding of where our feelings are coming from. And it's thought in the moment. That's it. That's where our feelings are coming from. Our thoughts, our feelings in this moment, creating our realities. And we all have that separate reality that we just talked about. It's the easiest way I've seen to see it, because we all know that none of us think alike. None of us experience anything exactly like the other. But it is a little shocking to think that I can't anticipate what my husband might say or do every single time, even though most of the time I can say, oh, he's going to say this or he's going to say that. And when he comes through and says, no, that's not what I meant, or that's not how it is, I'm like, oh, so tell me, how is that? And it's like we find new and deeper levels of the people that we've lived with. We've been married 25 years. I thought I knew him pretty well, and we're still finding out things about each other that we didn't know. So separate realities really helps us stay in our own circle, helps us to know how I'm experiencing life is perfect for me. It's how I view the world. You will never experience another person except for how you think about them. That's shocking, because we think we know a lot of things. It doesn't take us very long once we hear that to say, oh yeah, I don't really know anyone like I thought I did.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of it. We get to change ourselves whenever we want, however we want to. That well of being is always there for us to change at any moment. Just because we've been a certain way all of our lives doesn't mean we can't wake up today and say, guess what? I'm going to become something different. Whoever you are being today is not who you will be tomorrow or 5 years from now. We all grow, we all change. We have insights into how we work, and life completely changes. It's wonderful. It's how we're going to create this new healthcare system. It's how nursing is going to come into its own and let people know what nurses really do. This ability to see life from this perspective of your thought, your feeling coming out into the world is powerful, because people will see something they haven't seen before. And I think as we all grow and change and bring our gifts and talents to this emerging healthcare system, we're going to see people become healthier than they've been in years.
Mm.
And it starts from the inside out, from that, aligned with this paradigm. This paradigm is one of no exceptions. It doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the way we think about it. And every time we go, what we're going to talk about is outside in the circumstances affecting the way we feel, we're going to hopefully separate that out to a point where you know you're always 100% of the time living in the feeling of your thinking, no matter what's happening out in the world.
This really is holistic nursing and nurse coaching in a nutshell right here, because we're in a place now to notice people's misperceptions as we identify our own. We will begin to see, as we work with our clients, where they are either aligned or misaligned with the way that life works. And that really is our opportunity, especially as coaches, but holistic nurses as well. We are in a position to benefit the client. The most important person in the therapeutic relationship is the nurse. Now, it kind of feels backwards for a minute, because we know that the most important person is the patient. We want to get all of our information directly from the source. But when it's a therapeutic relationship, a nursing intervention, only the nurse can be the tool of that therapeutic intervention. Only the nurse can see the broader picture. The client is coming to the nurse for her professional work, and they benefit from us being able to point out to them when they are misaligned. But we can only hear and see that misalignment, that misperception, when we are clear ourselves, when we're open to listening for that informed knowing, that inner wisdom that always can come through us, when our minds are not busy and overcrowded, when we are aligned with how life works, then we can truly be a benefit to humanity.
I just wanted to say one small thing here about separate realities and nurses. I think we get so used to the knowledge that we have, the way to help people get well. We've studied, we've worked with people, and we forget that our public has no idea what we know.
Mm.
So their separate reality, they're just doing the best they can. They don't know what we know. I'm always amazed when people call me and say, what do I do about this? Or what do I do about that? And I think, well, that's common knowledge. No, it's not. It's not common knowledge. And that's one of the gifts that nurses have, is this ability to see the big picture, to see the full lifespan of a person, to want to know what makes another person tick, how they are experiencing life, and what is important to them. And we're really good listeners. We want to know that because we know once they leave our care, they're on their own. So the knowledge that we have, and we can impart on them any part of that, is incredibly helpful to people. And I just wanted us to remember that here, because it's not common for people to get to talk to nurses openly, freely, to gain the knowledge that they want to have. And I think that's what nurse coaching is going to bring to more people, is that ability to share our knowledge in a way that's beneficial to them, but also to ourselves, as we gain the joy and freedom to work in the way nurses want to work.
Well, and that really brings us back to nurses at work, which is when nurses are able to recognize that each of us have separate realities. That is going to be the end of the issue of bullying. When we understand, each of us, each nurse for themselves, understands that we're simply living in the feeling of our thinking, and that we're creating our experience moment to moment through our thoughts, that will be the end of bullying. We're going to recognize each other as being whole and complete, and that not that we have to impress our attitude or opinion on someone else, but rather that we can be accepting and curious about them, just as we are accepting and curious about our clients.
I love this picture because we all have separate realities. We're all thinking different things. And I think they're all beautiful. The way that we show up, the way that we interact, our desire to help people. We each have a separate reality of what that looks like, and we need it to be that way. We can't think like someone else. We can't have their thoughts. They can't have ours, but we can, knowing how this works, come together and create this synergy effect of bringing nursing and nurse coaching out into the world for everyone's benefit. And I think as we move through this time that we're in right now of defining nursing practice, moving away from the medical model a little bit, we'll always need our technical skills, always. That's not going to go away, but our ability to know where our experience is coming from, that we each see it a little bit different, will actually allow us to expand how nurses work in the world. Because as we do that and everyone else is doing that too, we are going to find common ground where we synergistically create a movement where people move towards this healthier lifestyle of knowing how they work. We're not separate from diet and exercise and all of those things that are good for our bodies, but we have always left out the mental health piece because we didn't know what to do about it. And we're suffering ourselves, and we just push it down and try not to think about it and try to do the things that make us feel better. This is the bridge between all of it. This resilience principles paradigm as the foundation of nursing, of life, gives us something we can count on to create this new nursing culture that will allow us to have new questions and new answers to our problems. They'll ground us in our ability to communicate with other people, and we will share it with everyone that we touch, because every time we do that, we send out the ripple of a healthier person and a healthier person. And the more times they're exposed to this, I'm the thinker of my world, I think it, I feel it, it's real, they will be able to navigate by themselves without the nurse into a healthier, better life.
Teresa talked about the biomedical model, and I think that we're really coming from a different stance in regard to human beings and the way that they function. Basically, with the principle of resilience, what we're seeing is that people are whole. They are already who they need to be and what they need to be, even in their last days. And in spite of their diagnosis, we are all whole. We all have what could be described as innate health. In other words, health that cannot be broken, cannot come apart, health that is integral to who we are. So our task now as health professionals is to look at the person with the eyes of seeing their wholeness, with the eyes of seeing their health, and moving forward from there. It's in a way a very opposite way of the biomedical model that only looks at the problems and takes each of the problems into detail and focuses on the problems. I know a lady whose granddaughter recently had surgery. She was just 10 days old, and open heart surgery was indicated. And she said to me, "Why does the doctor only always talk about the next problem?" And I said, "Well, that's the way the system is set up. It's a problem-oriented system." And she said he never talks about how much better she is. And so I think we've gotten ourselves into a habit, really, in the health professions of what we could even at this point describe as problem-oriented charting. We know that the health is there. Let's speak to that. And as we do that, we're just going to see people blossom. I'm thinking about, I listened to a couple of DNP students who were presenting research that they had done during the pandemic. They were working at a long-term care facility, and they utilized iPads for their clients to be able to talk to family members because they weren't able to visit at the time. And it was so interesting to me. This was conventional healthcare. And in the report that they gave us, um, there was no mention of how the patients experienced using the iPads. They had some pre and post tests that they did for quantitative analysis, but not the patient's experience. Well, one of these guys who had had a stroke actually had just had a baby at home. So he was able to be in touch with his wife and see their brand new baby. Don't you know that that was a beautiful healing moment for him? I wish that that could have appeared in the research. And that's why we use a mixed method when we work in holistic nursing, both the quantitative, the data, and then also the patient's experience, the qualitative. It's so wonderful to be able to see both sides of the coin when we're working with people in our practices.
I love that. Thank you. So knowing where our experience is coming from gives us help in the moment. It gives us that ability to take that pause, to see what's happening without our own feelings about it. There's a way to look at life where you don't have to have anything on the circumstance or on the other person, and realize whatever's coming up is your thoughts and your feelings about it. And we can use that from there as a barometer of where we are in that moment. It gives us that help that we need when we don't know what to do, or when we're stressing or struggling with something and we can't let it go. And if we could find that one thought that says, hold on, what's happening? And it gives us that breath, that openness, and that ability to create space and spaciousness between our thoughts and our feelings that allows us to experience that well of being within us, where the answers lie, where we're able to have a new thought and maybe even a new question about what to do next. Insight into that touches us deeply. It gives us that there's usually a sensation that goes with it. At least for me, there's like this tingling or this knowing feeling. That feeling is when your ego collapses on a certain subject. Like if you see something that you've thought about in the same way forever and ever, and suddenly you see it in a new light, it has new meaning, new ways of showing up. The moment it happens, not tomorrow, not in a few minutes, right then. And those insights actually create new neurons within our brain. That's how connected we are. Our thoughts create electrical energy within our brain that goes throughout our entire body. That is the information that we need to do whatever it is we need to do in the moment. So it's like those love letters, those little hearts of love letters that say, what's happening? You know, what's going on in my world? And we don't seem to notice it as much when we're in the beautiful feelings of life, you know, looking at a baby for the first time, or experiencing a sunset, or trying to figure out what to do next. We seem to notice it when we're not feeling as well, or when something appears to be a threat. They're all the same. They all come to us through our thoughts. So if we can take that one pause and notice, it will help us in that moment. And don't worry if you don't, it's okay, because sometimes we go, oh, I wish I would have, after the fact, after you've said something you shouldn't have said, or you wish you wouldn't have said something. And, hindsight is insight. We can still learn from that because we're never separate. We're still, if we're thinking about it in hindsight, it's still the present moment because we're still thinking about it.
Mhm.
And I love that because there's nothing to do. We talk about that sometimes as nothing to do. Well, there's still a whole lot going on in the nothing to do. But the nothing to do is just the noticing. Like, I don't have to go sit in the bathroom for 10 minutes and wonder, okay, now what do I do next? I can be having that experience in the midst of chaos. And I actually have experienced that many times, but more specifically was one day with a lady who came out of surgery and couldn't breathe. And we were, manually ventilating her. We put her on the BiPAP. We were trying to avoid the ventilator. And it was 6 hours of trying to figure out what was happening. And we just kept doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I realized I was in that flow of just doing, and there was no effort. And I looked back and I thought, I don't regret one decision I made. I don't regret one thing that happened because it was perfect. There was an ease, there was a feeling of connection, there was the knowing that there was nothing else to do but what we did. And in the end, I still wanted her to go to ICU, so she did. And we get up there and she gets up and she's like, oh, I feel so much better. And I thought, wow. So once she started feeling better, she felt better. I thought, this is amazing. So I could watch it knowing where my experience was coming from, knowing about these principles as a paradigm. I think set up this ability to see life as it was unfolding with complete awareness that this was happening and there was nothing wrong. We did what we needed to do every moment for 6 hours. And this outcome was a good outcome, but it still would have been okay even if something else had happened. Because in that moment, that was what needed to happen. And there's a feeling that goes with that, like this ease. There was no effort. It was a knowing of what to do. And it's always available. It's always there.
I'd like to take another look at our last item here. I know that that word ego, the way that we're using it is different from the way that Dr. Sigmund Freud used ego. The way that we're using ego is who you think you are and what you think of life. So just to break it apart a little bit, I'm going to start with the word when. And when your ego collapses, insight comes. We have so many thoughts that we're holding all the time about who we think we are. Did you notice that word think? Who we think we are and what we think of life. Well, so much of what we think is obsolete. In fact, studies have been done that show that 98% of our thoughts are old thoughts that we've thought before. We're just thinking the same thoughts over and over again. I am this, or I am that, and this is who I am. Well, I noticed one day that changed rather dramatically. It was the day that I went to court. In one moment, I was married. In the next moment, I was not. Who I was changed in an instant. And I had a new thought. about who I was. And insight came in that moment. It was an ordinary experience that happens every day in every courthouse across the land. But when we allow our thoughts that we hold so tightly about who we are and what we think of life, when we can release those, that is where new thought comes from. And new thought is what we call insight. So we use the word collapses here, ego collapses, but it might as well evaporate. It just disappears. It's in thin air because it was all an illusion in the first place. Who we think we are is not who we are. Who we are is whole, complete, healthy, well, and that can never be taken from us. So when we are open to that, the answers appear. The answers to life's questions suddenly are no longer a mystery. And we can move forward because we know exactly where to take the next step.
So we wanted to break it apart just a little bit more, just for our own help to understand this inside out versus outside in concept, because that's what it is, just a concept to help us see the inside out nature of this paradigm. Mind, thought, and consciousness, mind, consciousness, and thought create this paradigm that only works one way. Knowing that is what helps us navigate life. And in the inside out, we know where our experience is coming from. We are not fooled by the outside in thinking that looks like circumstances or people are responsible for how we're feeling. We know for a fact that it's us. There's so much freedom in that, just that knowing. But sometimes we do go outside in. It does look like circumstances. We're going to go over here to the outside in, or not aligned with the paradigm, because we can get off the mark a little bit, where sometimes it really is convincing that the circumstance is the reason we feel the way that we do. We can even say, well, I know it's my thinking, but as soon as you hear a but, you're in the mix. You're saying, we know we are experiencing our thought in the moment, but circumstances seem to influence the way that we feel. And I've talked to a lot of people, and they think that if they know it, but they have a holdout, that they're still aligned with the paradigm, and they're not. Because sometimes it's really difficult to see. I had an experience with a colleague at work where we did not see eye to eye. And I thought, well, there's something wrong with me. And then I thought, no, there's something wrong with her. And I thought, well, that's a mixed paradigm. What's happening here? And I couldn't get peace about it. I thought, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't understand why she's so upset. And it just kept going on. And that repetitive thinking Lyn was just talking about, I kept thinking about it in the same way every time I thought about it. It was so ingrained in the way things were, the way life looked to me was normal. And to her, it was not. I also found out at that same time that I have a fairness bone. I thought, well, I'm not the only one that has that, obviously, but I thought it was fair the way things worked out. However, she was still upset by it. So there was like this confusion so I knew that I wasn't seeing the circumstance from the perspective of the inside out. And so I was talking with Dr. Blevins, and he was like, I can tell by the way that you're talking about it, and I can see that you're outside in about it, but you have a little too much skin in the game about what happened. You're not responsible for how she thinks or feels. And I said, I know. And then he said, whether it was your gall or your righteous indignation about it, that's causing you the pain that you're having now. And I realized in that instance that that's what it was. It looked like it was my ego. It looked like normal. It didn't look like my thought. It looked like something I needed to defend. Like, no, this is true. Well, yeah, it was true to me, but it wasn't the whole picture. And when he said that, that part of me that went, oh, it opened up this space of seeing where that attitude that I had had, even though it served me very well in a lot of ways, many ways, there were a few times where it didn't. And that was when I didn't know where I was coming from. And since that experience, being aligned with the principles and understanding myself, that I go in and out of this all the time. I never stay 100% aligned with this paradigm because I'm human. There's sometimes I'm not thinking about, oh, this works only one way. I'm just living my life. But as soon as you notice that that's what's happening, you can actually take a breath and have some insight and settle back down, and things look easy again. It's the ebb and flow of life. It's all here for us to enjoy. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You don't have to catch yourself. It's in the noticing that helps us navigate, that gently points us back to how this paradigm works, that allows that ease to appear. And it's just a really great place to be at this time in my career, being able to express this, to share it with people so they can have it. I don't own it. We've all been doing it our whole lives. But it is a new conversation, and it is a different way of looking at life. And there's value here because it really helps us navigate much easier.
Teresa, I think you've just done a beautiful job of explaining this. I'm going to tell our audience now to hold on to your seats because the next slide is going to be a bit of a shocker.
Here we go. There is no outside. It's always 100% true that we are living in the feeling of our thinking at all times, even when it doesn't look like it. We will know where our experience is coming from the more often we notice it, and we're not fooled by our outside-in thinking. That's the beauty of the paradigm. There's no exceptions, there's no anomalies. There's nothing to do about it. We're already in it. We are it. And knowing it helps us.
This is such freedom because now we can realize that we can let go of all that old, outmoded thinking, that distracted thinking, that ruminative thinking. When Dr. Blevins was working with a large Midwestern medical center, he was working with a group of physicians who actually on his quantitative analysis showed that they had decreased their ruminative thinking by 64%. Now think about that. If we were all able to release the extra thoughts that we had thought already a million times before, what would that look like? Well, for them, they were able to find their answers to their patients' problems more quickly. They were able to leave work on time. They had better work-life balance at home with their families. and they love the institution that they worked for. So this is no small thing. It affects every part of our life, our work life, our home life. It's not separate. We carry it with us. We don't need to think every moment of every day. We can just relax. And when we do, the thoughts that are needed come to us. We don't control our thoughts. Thought happens all of the time. It's kind of like clouds floating in the sky. We can choose to grab onto one thought and think it over and over, or we can release it back up into the sky and let it float by. It's our choice. We are not controlled by our thoughts, and neither do we control our thoughts. There's just incredible freedom in that.
I think it's good to remind ourselves here that these principles, mind, consciousness, and thought, are neutral. They are absolutely neutral. They are a power. We just use them with our personal mind and our personal thoughts to create life. So that they're equal to every single human being in the world. That this is true for all people. And I like the neutrality of it, because we often think we can control our thoughts, or that we can be aware of something maybe, but it's all there. We can't control thought because it just comes. It includes all thoughts, from the very best to the very, very worst. They're all there for us. The good news is most of us are always looking for the best thoughts. So if that's what we're doing, then we will live in the feeling of those. I just wanted to say that so that we don't get into the thought that we can control our thinking, because it's not possible.
Thanks, Teresa.
Uh-huh.
So insight helps us. This is a shocker too. I mean, that first line, it is not intellectual. Oh man, we have spent so many years studying and practicing and studying and practicing and studying. Well, of course, there's a huge benefit that we've honed our skills as healthcare practitioners. But what we're talking about now is even more basic than that. It's how we tick. That's the thing that has always been a mystery to humanity. The word psychology actually is the study of the psyche. And when psychologists realized that they didn't understand the human psyche, they moved over to behavior. So now we have behavioral science, behavioral health. Well, it's already after the fact. It's already too late. The thought's already been thought. We can't bring it back. We can have a new thought, but we can't bring back the old thought and change it. It's already gone. That thought comes to us in an instant and not of our own doing. So to say that it's not intellectual is absolutely true. We're learning now at a different level. We're learning with information that is much more personal to us. It's actually the way that we've always learned. This is how we learned to walk. We did not watch a video about how to walk. We didn't read a book about how to walk. We simply stood up, put one foot in front of the other, fell down a million times learning to do this, but figured out how through experience, not through intellect, how to balance and move forward at the same time. It can't be learned any other way. It cannot be learned any other way. So we're now gaining a new appreciation for insight. That insight that we had about how to walk, how to ride a bike, has served us our entire lives. And not that there wouldn't be a problem somewhere down the line with a TIA or a brain injury. I mean, but people can relearn how to walk. They can have insight about relearning also. We're here. This is really the crux of humanity, being able to explain our own behavior. When William James wrote his most famous book in the 1890s, it was called The Principles of Psychology. And his colleagues read it and they said, well, what are the principles? They're not in the book. And he said, oh, well, those haven't been found yet. Now they have. Helen Erickson, in her wonderful theory, Modeling and Role Modeling, said that the principles of health have not been uncovered. Now they have. These are the principles of health. These are the principles of life. And we're using them every day in every way to create the way that we're moving forward. And yet we haven't known how to talk about them in this way until just now.
This brings up so many things as far as like things that we have learned, things we are curious about. A lot of people are interested in quantum physics and consciousness. Even William James wrote about consciousness before and after he wrote the book on psychology, the first book on psychology. And he is ostracized by his colleagues because they said, you can't do that. We don't even know what it is. We can't describe it. That didn't stop him from trying. And when I was doing research about him, I was really impressed with some of his descriptions about consciousness. He was actually onto something. He knew that we were aware that we think. He knew we were aware of how we felt in our bodies. He just didn't have principles to base it on. And I've seen any number of writings. This isn't new information. What's new is our ability to accurately describe how these principles have always worked. They make sense of the theories that people are talking about. Lyn and I just did a presentation to Nursology. Fascinating to hear different people's views of the work that they're doing. But my one thought that I just kept thinking was like, if we had principles to base this on, we would have new questions and new answers, and a truth of how it works would emerge through their work. That will change the way we look at all the theories, at the way we live life, the way we do our nursing, the way we do our coaching. It informs us in a way that people hear the truth of it. It's like when you tell your patient that they need to eat less sugar because they're diabetic, and they listen and nod at you and say, okay, yes, ma'am, I'll do that. And then they go home and they don't even have a refrigerator to put their fresh fruits and vegetables in. We're not getting through. We haven't lived in their world to know what their challenges are. And I think this opens up that world to ask those questions and let the patient tell us what it is they can do, because those are the things they will do. Figure out maybe a different way to get those fruits and vegetables to that person instead of going to the store and buying a box of cereal. it'll give us a different way to navigate, but also that foundation that we've been missing since forever, since now.
This really is described as living in a pre-paradigm era before principles were discovered for chemistry. They didn't know what the elements were. And then the periodic table appeared with all of the elements, one by one. Well, yeah, mostly one by one. And then when we think about someone as brilliant as Albert Einstein, the theory of relativity, his formula, E equals mc squared, that did not come from any of his previous learning. That did not come from the work that his colleagues had done. That came to him through insight. Energy is mass and the speed of light squared. Now, that theory of relativity was not understood by his colleagues. It took them years to understand what he was talking about. But it was progress. There was a step in the right direction. And of course, we've gone now from Newtonian physics all the way to quantum physics, but each was a step along the way. And it didn't come through one brick at a time, building up what was the current knowledge. It came as an insight. They say that Newton was sitting under an apple tree and an apple dropped on his head. He became curious about what later became to be described as gravity. Well, that's where we are now. We're in an era of curiosity when we can begin to know a new truth about the way that life works and begin to share it. We really have, Teresa and I, a huge goal, the first of which is to bring resilience to ourselves and our profession, and through that, to bring resilience to all of humanity.
Thank you, Lyn. So what we've been talking about is actually life in perfect motion. Our thoughts, our feelings, giving us an experience of our life, and recognizing how insight into this allows us to see how everyone else works too, the way it's always worked, and to know that no matter where we are, what we're doing, we're perfectly okay. We will know in the moment what we need to do next as our awareness of where our thinking is coming from emerges. We'll know exactly what direction we want to go. We'll know what questions to ask next. We'll see life in a completely different lens. Since learning about these principles, the things I read have changed. It's like I can pick out the truth of a statement, whether I've ever heard it before or not, and I can see where people are going as far as they're trying to describe this feeling and these thoughts and how they interact. Well, when we know it only works one way, no matter how we describe it from that perspective, we will be describing it truthfully in our own way. We share what we know as true with others. People can hear that. They know. We can always say, have sayings in our culture, we can smell a lie, or I can hear the truth. That's our consciousness, that's our intuition, our informed knowing. It's all here for us to experience life with. But when things are true, it really helps us to navigate much easier. So if we're having a bad day, we can recognize we're having a bad day. I've even instilled a skip a day at my house. Sometimes I don't want that day again, and I just choose to ignore it. It's great. I can mess up on something and say, you know what, just really don't think I want to try that again. And just say, it's okay. We're not perfect. Do it messy, but do it from the truth. And you can't fail from there, because you will always know where you're coming from. We like to know what's true in our life. And when we can count on knowing we're the thinker and feeler of our experience, and so is everyone else, as we move forward from that place, life will get easier. It will be okay. And we will have no regrets, because every moment of every day, we're doing the best that we can based on the knowledge that we have now.
I'm going to take us back to our own profession for a minute and the NIH study about certified nurse coaches. We talked about the quantitative findings with the 3 different areas of a diagnosis, but now let's look at the qualitative, which is the certified nurse coaches' thoughts and feelings about being certified nurse coaches. Well, they were very interesting. 70% of the nurse coaches that were surveyed said that they had improved job satisfaction. That was their thought. 80% said that they had improved interpersonal relationships. That can't be measured. That was their thought, their feeling about communicating with their colleagues and people at home. And 85% said that they had improved personal health and health habits. Well, where does that come from? It comes from their thoughts about their health. We have always used our thoughts and our feelings to express our experience of life. And now we have an opportunity to show people how human beings actually tick, how they actually function. And it is such a freedom to be able to have the language now to express this and let people know that they have it too, so they can identify it for themselves. Teresa, do you want to talk about your 3 o'clock in the morning?
So I wrote a goal. It has to be 23 years ago when I started my journey, probably 20 more than that, my journey to help people even in the middle of the night when no one was around, because that seemed to be when a lot of people come to the end of the line. They're like, okay, I've got to go to the ER, or the panic has reached such a point that they reach out to other people. And I realized there wasn't a modality that could do that, but the principles can. A person can actually recognize their fearful thinking and know they actually do know what to do next, whether it's to make the trip to the ER or they can wait until in the morning. But when you take the circumstance out of the way and see it for what it really is, as just something you have to take care of, and that you're actually okay right now, even if it's an emergency, you will have some clarity of thought that help you to make the decision. I can't tell you how many people have told me, they said, I've tried everything. I thought I could wait to come to the ER. And they decided they just couldn't wait anymore because they didn't know what else to do. And I always felt like those people were the ones that were trying to do the best they knew how until they didn't know what else to do and they reached out for help. We all have that within us at every moment. So I didn't know that the principles would be the answer to my desire to have something that would help at even 3 o'clock in the morning. And now it looks so normal, but I didn't have any idea. And now I do.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is just such a beautiful image. The well of being. You know, it's funny to me. I happen to be blessed to have a pool in my backyard, which I'm looking at now from the corner of the edge of my computer. I never feel as free and open to the energy of the universe as when I'm in the water swimming. It's a funny image because, of course, it's a square concrete box. And for me to have that feeling, it tells me, yeah, it is all thought, Lyn. But we can tap into it. We have our own well of being every day, everywhere we go. We carry it with us because it is inside of us. It is who we are. Go ahead, Teresa.
That was funny. I'm just giggling. We live in our thinking so much that I've even felt that way in the bathtub. Like I just so anyway, that came up. But these foundational principles allow us to find our bearings when we lose them. We've never lost our resilience. People think that they are not, but they just don't know that it's where their thinking has taken them. And yeah, there's the resilience of overcoming an accident, lifting the car off the child after the wreck. Where did that come from? Where did that strength come from? It's always there. It's that part of us that knows what to do. I guarantee you, if you're lifting a car off of someone, you're not thinking about how you're going to do it. You're thinking about saving that child. And you do what needs to happen to make that happen. That's that part of being. You have become what you needed to be in that instant. And it's always there. It takes on that ease that we didn't know was there, to know that whatever is needed from us in any moment will appear. Even if in hindsight we think that that wasn't how it was supposed to be, that's not true. That's not how the paradigm works. You can have a new thought, and we can always pivot. Sometimes people say, oh, we can never go back. We can't go back, but we can pivot and go in a new direction. And there is nothing wrong with doing that. My path of life is not a straight path. It has winds and twists and turns. And sometimes I go back and think I've been here before, but no, I really haven't. I can remember a time that was like that, but I'm not the same person. My well of being is different. I can never go back and find my 15-year-old self, but I remember her. I remember things about her. And sometimes I can see that I might still be her a little bit in some ways, but I am totally different in my presence, in my life, in the things that I think about now. Those are who I'm being now. It's like you have a reason to be here now, to look forward, to see what's here for us, to create a world that we envision, bringing our gifts and talents out to the people that we are in touch with. And we have each other. Everyone in this conference or in this retreat right now is bringing their gifts and talent to the group for us to experience each other as we're being in this moment, to create something bigger than ourselves as a way to connect to each other, to get momentum as we move out into this new way of being. And the direction will be determined by our personal thoughts and feelings in this moment as we move forward each moment of every day. And our health and well-being will emerge effortlessly as we become more and more aware of being intentional about what we are creating and learning from each other and gaining new knowledge and listening to each other. You're listening to this as a recording, even though Lyn and I are watching it with you and being here with you. This is creating that momentum. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen, because I know I've been talking to a lot of people and there is a lot of envisioning going on. So it's going to be amazing.
Well, I'd love to say something about that word resilient. We've been hearing a lot about that in the last couple of years, and we take it really quite literally from a very different stance. It's not the nurse's fault if she's not resilient. What we take it as is that each of us are naturally resilient. In other words, nurses are naturally resilient. And we are working with some elements now that help us see that resilience more clearly. It's always been here. It's always been something that we actually literally have just taken for granted, but now we can bring it out and use our new words to express what it is that we're talking about. Nothing more has to be added to make us resilient. We don't have to memorize something. We don't have to sit on a pillow with our eyes closed. We are resilient. Now, we've just received back our data from Baylor University about our both qualitative and quantitative studies from our students after 3 courses. And those 3 courses are what we've set up for nurses to be prepared to sit for the board certification exam for coaching, and they can also sit for holistic nursing with the same CEs. But what the data has shown us is that the 3 measures that we use quantitatively, the hard facts, show that our students have increased in their resilience and well-being scores, increased with each of our 3 courses. That's hard data. This is evidence-based. Our students' resilience scores have increased. Now, what I'm going to have to explain in my article is that we didn't add anything to the nurses. They didn't have anything more than they had when they began. The only thing that is changed is their understanding of where resilience comes from, their understanding of their own experience of life, their understanding of their resilience. That is what has changed.
And here the journey begins. We're here now. Thank you all for being here, for being on this retreat with us. I can't wait to see what kind of fun we're going to have. Some references, and you can contact us at nursecoaching.com if you would like to.
Have your question answered. You know, one of the things that we really want to do is encourage other chapter leaders. And I know that the way that we actually structured this retreat is to have speakers from 6 different chapters nationwide, to 6 different American Holistic Nurses Association chapters. And it's been just thrilling to have the opportunity to work together with all of these nurses to produce this beautiful retreat for us. And I can only imagine where we go from here. I mean, this has never been done before, not through AHNA. I don't know if it's been done through anything, but this virtual retreat that we're on both live and experientially, gathering just with ourselves, some of us at the computer at home, some of us in small groups in other locations. This is new. This was Teresa's brainchild. It had never been thought of before in the context of AHNA. So we've got an opportunity now to see our thoughts in so many new ways and just really spread our wings to imagine what it might be possible to accomplish with our new skills, which are an understanding, our new way of thinking that is not clouded by our old misperceptions. We actually work with a group of people that we call the council because we all do everything. We don't actually have individual offices per se. We happen to be co-leaders of our local chapter, but we are just experimenting. We're just experimenting. And for us to be working virtually is a very comfortable and familiar space. We could not have opened our program on 3 continents without the internet. The internet did not exist when I graduated nursing school. It does now. We have new thought. We have new ways of explaining things and experiencing life. Welcome to the new. Teresa?
The future of nursing is here now. So let's adjourn to turn off the video, and if anyone has questions, we'll be happy to answer. Thanks for listening, everyone.